In 1984, George Orwell wasn't worried about lies. He was worried about edited truths. In a world where history keeps changing and language keeps shrinking, people are told not to trust what they remember. That's not sci-fi anymore. That's administrative policy. What Newspeak actually was. Newspeak wasn't about banning books, because the powers that be threaten to ban stuff and people stand up and fight for their rights, and then they say, okay, you gonna fight for yourself? Then we'll just take it by force, right? It was also about simplifying language until certain thoughts became impossible. If you break something down to the very lowest common denominator, and it gets so simplified that you rob people of the ability to think critically, then free thought and growth and empowerment and knowledge of self become impossible. Fewer words means fewer questions. Let's rob you of your ability to speak and verbalize yourself. Let's go even further and say, let's rob you of the ability to ask questions. Let's make it illegal to question our authority. Fewer words equals fewer questions. If you can't describe injustice, then you can't argue against it. You see the theme here, right? It's all about simplification. And it's all about taking your ability to have a free mind. If you can't question authority, you can't ask them what they're doing. If your mind is so simple that you can't think critically, then you can't plot or strategize to get from under the oppressor. Newspeak isn't censorship with a hammer. Newspeak is iron fist and velvet gloves. Revisionist history. Revisionist history is the real weapon. The National Park Service removed a slavery exhibit in Philadelphia. It wasn't vandalized. It was no protest. It was just moved quietly, administratively. This wasn't random. This wasn't a mistake. This was policy. Who makes policy in this country? The exhibit explained George Washington's slave ownership and included the names and lives of enslaved people. And it existed at the president's house site. Washington enslaved over 300 people during his lifetime. He benefited directly from the labor while leading a revolution built on freedom. While president, he rotated enslaved people in and out of Pennsylvania every 6 months to avoid laws that would have freed them. When one of his enslaved women, Una Judge, escaped, he actively tried to recapture her. This is not whoopsie poopsie. I accidentally got wealthy on all these slaves that landed on my lap. These were intentional choices. But for generations now, history has softened the language. He was a reluctant slaveholder. He was a man of his time. He was in moral conflict. That's Newspeak. Meanwhile, President Donald J. Trump signed an executive order called Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, but removing museum exhibits that depict the history of slavery doesn't seem like you're restoring truth and sanity. It seems like you're rewriting history, or at the bare minimum, editing it. Restoring truth is always a red flag. Truth doesn't need restoration. Truth doesn't fear complexity. Truth doesn't require removing of information, because when you restore truth, you're implying that there was something wrong with the truth that we had. Truth is based on facts, and facts are something that could be proven by evidence. So what are you restoring if a truth is a fact and we could go back and look at evidence and find out what really happened? Truth does not fear complexity. It's not really a gray area. Truths and lies are black and white because we know that truths are based in facts, and facts are something that could be proven based on evidence. Truth did not require removal of information, because the truth is the fact and the fact is the evidence that lets you know that something is the truth. So when you start removing information, then you start to remove facts. And when you start to remove facts, you start to remove truths. Any regime that announces the fact that they're restoring truth is about to lie right to your face. Since that order, the Park Service has removed information about racism, sexism, LGBTQ rights, slavery, and climate change. This is how history gets erased without burning books. You don't erase history by denying it. If you deny the treatment of the citizens that built this country, it relinquishes you of accountability. If there's no accountability for what you did and you continue to deny the mistreatment of the people that helped build this country, then I guess you're not that bad a guy, right? Another way to erase history is by not teaching it. There's a very good reason that the curriculum that I was taught and my parents was taught and their parents was taught is being removed from schools. It's because if you take all the literature and remove all the exhibits and all the mistreatment of the citizens that helped build this country in a couple generations, it'll be like it never happened. It'll be gone. You call history controversial and divisive and quietly remove it from public spaces. But what's really controversial and divisive is racism, sexism, denying LGBTQ plus rights, slavery, and denial of climate change. They're not even saying that slavery didn't happen. They're just saying maybe we shouldn't talk about it no more. Maybe we should just misremember it. Maybe people that owned slaves weren't that bad. Memory is a real threat to power. George Orwell's 1984 was published June 8th, 1949, but it feels just like today. Newspeak, Big Brother, a surveillance state, people being watched, people being killed in the street. The scariest thing about George Orwell's world was not Big Brother. It was the idea that people might remember differently. Because memories make comparison, and comparisons create resistance. If you think about something that you know for a fact happened, it was history that you and other people lived through. You have a shared experience. You remember the smell. You remember the visceral emotion that you had. You remember your heart racing and the deep breaths that you took, and something traumatic happened and you remember it like it was yesterday. And somebody says, nah, that didn't happen. That's not what happened. That ain't what happened. Because they're scared that you'll remember differently than what they say. Because again, memories make comparison. You're going to compare what you know as a fact to what they say happened. And once you start comparing, you're going to want to resist, because who wants to be fed lies? If the past keeps changing, the present will become easier to control. MAGA is a narrative, not a plan. Make America great again depends on greatness. Great for who? Great when? Great at what cost? Whose story gets in the way of the fantasy of your greatness? What do you do to people that are in opposition of what you presume to be great? You can't make something great again because you can't even take accountability and admit how you acquired said greatness in the first place. It's not about statues. It's not about exhibits. And it's not about one president. This is about who decides what counts as history. This is about who benefits from our attention spans being shortened and our memories being redacted. I don't think that George Orwell was trying to warn us about the future. I think that he was showing us how cyclical we are. Empires and dynasties and kingdoms crumble. And the root cause of it is power and greed and superiority.